Actually in the operations center, so really in the main operations and deployment area. But people knew I was a nurse, although I wasn't working in that role there because I was logistics. And so 2 Reg Force medics actually brought in this woman who had been in her home for 10 days. So I don't know if anybody's been up by St. Andrews or at St. Andrews, but it's a very rural area. So there was a small firehouse and whatnot, but she lived in a great big old farmhouse. And she had been there living by herself, and she was in her late 70s. So she had been there with no heat and no electricity for 10 days by the time they found her. And so they were able to bring her in. And it was really some people that lived down the road that could not get out to travel down to check on her because of how fast this ice storm came in place. So they brought her to me because they were unable to actually check her condition out, because they were both guys, and she wanted clearly a woman to aid her. So gradually we were able to, I sat down and talked to her and had something to eat and drink with her at the shelter, or at the fire station, which was, I think the room size was probably smaller than this room where we were actually working out of. It was very small. But she came in, and I was able to gradually get her to take off these layers and layers of gloves she had on, and we were able to take her into back room to finally get her to take off these layers and layers of clothing that she had, and from her fingertips to here were black from frostbite. And when she took off her layers that she had on her legs and her feet, it was the same thing. So it was very, very sad. Because we knew inevitably that once she got medical treatment, that it was, that these were limbs that she would not much longer have use of. So it was very, very sad to me. After they took her to the hospital, so she agreed to go to the hospital. A few days later, we went out to check on her condition. And when we went into the home, and she wasn't there at the time, but we were able to go in because the police had come with us and the door was unlocked, and we went in. But she had a very large old farmhouse, and I would say if you'd split this room in half, that's how big her living area was. But she had built walls inside the living room so that she had created herself walls of piles of newspaper to try to stay warm. And in the very center of that was this barrel that she had been burning the newspaper in to try and stay warm. So it was very, very sad. And I had kind of put that away in my memory. And then when I came onto this project, I really thought, yeah, this is one of the reasons we need this, because we can't let this happen to people. We need to find a way for people to live healthier lives, to know what to do when they're in the situation, to prepare for it, and that we have mechanisms in place to make sure that we don't have people sitting out there isolated. We've, of course, put a lot of money into our services and the way we do emergency management now, but that doesn't mean that that can't still happen. We hear about situations where people die alone in their homes and they're found days and days later, and these types of things, when you see them, you carry those on with you for a long time. So that's actually why I've decided to come on this project and make it work as much as I possibly can. And this is certainly the community to do it. And we have such a great community to work in. As we were going out and trialing and piloting this, we had people who really felt they were taking their journey on their own and didn't feel at the time that it was our journey, that they kept saying, this is my journey, I'm describing my journey and you're helping me through that. Everybody else does support me. So we actually switched it to sharing my journey. So that's just the story behind that, but that pamphlet really just kind of gives a nutshell piece as to why the name change. But the pamphlet we use for actually promoting people to and encouraging them to call us if they have someone who they think would be benefited by the program. So we give out those at all sorts of different events. Under the overview page is just for your leisure, tells you a bit more about the training itself. And then if you flip to the tab program, that's actually where we're starting. So the presentation I'm going to go through right now is really just, it gives you a very surface overview of the compassion care community. And we'll go through kind of what's been happening in our environment and why now is really a time for us all to come together to say we need to start changing things now so that as we age and as our kids age, we know that they're going to be living in this world where people are helping and supporting one another and they'll have the help they need. So what's happening in our society right now as it pertains to technology? So what's been happening, say, even over the past 10 or 20 years?
We've become disconnected.
We've become disconnected? How? I think you brought some of that in. Computers and phones. So computers and phones are wonderful technology, but they actually create that disconnected style of communicating and almost a passive style of communication. So people could, I get this a lot, I send you a text on your cell phone and you didn't respond to me, and then they're mad. And I'm like, but I don't use my cell phone for that reason. I use my cell phone for emergencies and I call people. So I still call on my cell phone. And the generation we're in now, they say, what's wrong with you? Right? They're moving into texting. So this is something that, can we change that? We can't necessarily change that, but we have to figure out how to try and convince people that being face-to-face with an individual is actually more beneficial. So the technology helps in quick communications, in emergency, those types of things. Anybody will have different ideas as to it, but how we use technology helps to define whether or not we stay more personally connected with one another, right? What had happened 100 years ago when we didn't have phones? How did we stay connected? You could say everybody was isolated in their own home, but they weren't, were they? So what did they do? They went to church and they came together in church and they met one another. Exactly. My father does this still to my day and it drives my sister nuts. He doesn't call, he doesn't plan, he just shows up, he knocks on the door and stops in to visit. Which I don't mind when people do that because I'm quite happy to have people visit, but it does, more and more, you'll find people get irritated by that because they think, why didn't you call, right? Why didn't you plan? Well, you had this and that. But that was really a great way for people to just open their homes up and sit and share for even 5-10 minutes and connect directly. So that's great. Yeah, you're right. They walked down the road. They got some exercise, they drove down there. Then I'm not saying anything about not planning. Planning's great. Helps us nowadays. What else about technology? What's it done to us physically? Right, so we've got all the conveniences to sit at home, right? So we've got gigantic screen televisions. So it's very easy for us to go home and sit in a nice big comfy chair, put our feet up. Oh, I've had a rough day at work, and watch TV, and then just maybe have a nap or whatnot. But we have the convenience of big screen TVs. We've got television now. What happened? What did people do before television and before going, and not just church? What else did people do?
Listen to the radio.
Okay, listen to the radio. Yeah, absolutely. That was one thing, and not everybody had a radio, right? They'd walk to someone else's house and they'd gather around the radio together, right? Even
A lot of knitting and crocheting and sewing.
yeah,
Gossiping.
yeah. So gossiping, knitting. Yeah. So they were doing kind of these practical things together in a supportive group. So natural supportive groups. What else did people do?
They sat on their porches and talked to people when they walked by.
Yes, they sat on their porches and talked to people when they walked by. Absolutely. So you get to know the people in your neighborhood. And I'm glad you brought that up because we actually challenge our students in the classes that we do to go out and introduce themselves to someone they've never met and offer to do something for that person, whether it's just talking to them or walking with them or whatnot. And not everybody does this. But one student we had said, you know what, I thought about what you said, and she said, I walked down, there's this guy 2 or 3 streets down, he comes out, he sits on his porch, he has a cigarette. And she said, I think she's trying to get away from his wife. He's trying to get away from his wife. And so she always kind of just walked by really quick because she perceived him as this grumpy guy sitting on the couch. But she stopped and said hi, and she said, we actually got in a conversation, and he was a really nice guy. So that just changed this perception of negativity and, oh my gosh, that guy, stay away, to he is really a nice guy, and the next time I go by, I'm going to make sure I stop and say hi. So, yeah, just very simple things start to drive us to become more compassionate. So it's an aside, but it's just really about what we're here for today. So technology has been great in many ways, but we also used to, and I know this is how my parents met. They used to go to dances. So you would go to dance, a big dance hall, there'd be live music, and you would be out meeting people, dancing with them, you'd get physical activity. And now what we're ending up with people sitting comfortably in a chair, not getting their physical activity as much, right? So naturally we were going out, we were walking to the neighbor to talk because we didn't have phones, we were also dancing, so we were maintaining our physical activity. So technology has changed the way our health is in ways that aren't necessarily the best, right? But we got to move forward, right? Technology, we could say, a lot of people use these things called Fitbits. Look how many steps I did today. And if you shake your hand enough this way, sometimes it makes it go 1,000 more steps, right? So a lot of people like them. You know, it's good in that it creates this motivation, right? Because it gives you knowledge about what your status is in terms of your physical activity, and maybe it motivates you to do a little bit more, right? More walking or jogging or whatever it is. So technology helps us conversely in these ways. So what's happening with our demographics? Okay, so we do have an aging population, sure. How many people, does anybody know what the ratio of people dying to people being born is? So the ratio of people dying to the ratio of people being born in the world, worldwide, is there's 2 people being born for every person that dies. So we've got lots and lots of people coming into the world, and we've had lots of medicine that has actually made us live longer. So we are aging, but we don't necessarily have the monetary or the financial structure to support us in the way healthcare had evolved over the years from, I don't know if anybody remembers, but the first hospital in Leamington was a big house, right? And you'd go there for just very specific things, but you wouldn't be going there for a lot of the things that people go to the hospital now for, right? It was very, right, you had a doctor, a country doctor or whatnot, but it wasn't a publicly funded institution, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we've gradually, in our province, we've actually become more financially heavy on healthcare. And it's not something that can be supported with the growth of the aging population. And many countries struggle with the same type of thing. So that's what we're experiencing here. But demographics, does anybody know that Windsor is the 3rd most ethnically diverse city in Canada? So we have lots of people coming from other countries, making it a very diverse population, and also we have different types of things introduced into our world, and we actually have, people call them superbugs or things like that, right? We fight things with antibiotics. We actually end up sometimes creating things that aren't we don't have any drugs that can resist them, right? So we create these microorganisms that actually create disease. So, pardon?
Old diseases are coming back.
And old diseases are coming back. Yeah. Yes, that's true. People who don't want to have their kids immunized because it's not something they did in their own country, those types of things. And we even know that in our ecosystem with the Asian carp starting to overtake our Great Lakes. And so all of this is because of technology, advancements in transportation, right? So all of this is related to the demographic piece as well. Okay, so that means we want to look at a citizen-driven approach to change things. And so what we did was we said, let's get everybody together. And this started back in 2014. Wow, time flies. 2014, when Carol Derbyshire went to a conference. And at the conference, she met Deb Sattler, who had worked at the Ministry of Health for 30 years in home care and had saw a number of changes over that time and said, we need to focus on people becoming stronger and healthier and becoming more educated in regard to managing their own health care and identifying what their needs. So we've shifted from, does anybody remember kind of the length of stay of a person who had hip surgery or knee surgery, say 30 years ago?
Probably 10 days.
Yeah, 10, 14 days, right? You went in the hospital and you said, okay, I know and I feel confident that everybody here is going to take great care of me, and I'm not going to go home until I'm ready to go back into my home environment and manage the way I was before I came in. So what's it like today? Anybody know anybody who's had hip or knee surgery?
2 days for a hip for my husband and 2 days for a knee.
2 days for a knee and 4 days for a hip.
But they didn't think it was good to get them up and moving. That's why they kept them 2 weeks. They made them stay in bed a long time, and they found out that made it worse, not better.
Right. Okay, so on the converse side, you're saying that they kept people in bed longer and that wasn't good.
And there's better hips and knees than there were.
And yes, so the prosthetics have changed, right? So you feel, so it's much harder to kind of organize things in 2 to 4 days than you could in 10 to 14 days. And I know, for example, from my father's experience, I mean, he needed someone there to help take care of him. He could not have gotten back home and been by himself. So 2 to 4 days is very quick, right? So we've changed that, but we've not necessarily changed our thinking, right? Because it was kind of brought upon us. It's gradually become better and better, and we're all more and more aware of what's expected of us. So you either go there prepared or you're not going to end up going back home, right? You got to go someplace else. Okay, so the approach to change for us for this is that we want people to achieve the goals that they want to try and achieve within what their means are, and create a better equity and a quality of life for everybody within the community. And so our philosophy is that we look at the whole person, the body, mind, spirit, their emotions, their ties to the social and community environment, and their unique journey for optimal health, wellness, and quality of life. So this compassion care community actually arose out of a number of people, a coalition of people that came together to say, here's a way that we can actually make change. So the more people we educate and the more people that become empowered to manage their own health and become knowledgeable about what they need to do to stay healthy, the better our community is going to be. And then not only that, but let's look at people who are living in isolation, and why are they in isolation, and how can we motivate them to come out of that isolation and live a healthier life. Because we know that when people are isolated or living alone, what are some of the common things that happen to them?
They get sick.
They get sick, yes?
We were at the hospice conference last week, and that was what they talked about. Social isolation is a predetermined factor to being sick.
Yes. Depression, that's a good one. Why do we become depressed when we're alone? No one to talk to, absolutely. So they did studies at a University of Michigan, I believe it was, within the past year that said people who have a best friend live longer than people who don't.
People with pets too.
People with pets, yes. So having that around helps your social side of things. What else when we're alone? So the kind of the connection, the social connection when we're alone. What else?
You don't eat properly and you either over-medicate yourself or under-medicate yourself.
Perfect. So you're not eating properly. You either over-medicate yourself, you under-medicate yourself. What happens if we don't drink enough? We become dehydrated. Does anybody know what that does to us cognitively? It impairs our cognitive thinking. So then in terms of our mental health, there's often a misdiagnosis of people having mental health disorders when really there's an underlying physical thing. Common things are the dehydration, malnutrition, so vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies. What percentage of muscle do we lose every day once we turn 50? Sorry, what'd you say?
Don't tell me.
Talking cell-wise or?
Our percentage of our muscle mass overall.
I know, but in cells.
Not the brain cells, yeah. 30? Every single day we lose 1 to 2% of our muscle mass. What are the building blocks of muscle? Anybody? Protein, excellent. So if you are not eating protein, something with protein every day, or I know there's like supplements like protein drinks, shakes, all sorts of that stuff, then people over 50 are losing their muscle mass very quickly. What happens when we start to lose our muscle mass? We get weak, absolutely. And what happens when we start to become weak? We fall. How many people in Ontario died last year due to falls? Anybody? Take a stab from falling. You fall and the complications ensue, or you fall and you just die because you fell off the roof on your head. So more than 2,000 people last year in Ontario died due to falls. There's more than 20,000 falls every year, and people who are over 65 fall more frequently than anybody else. And a lot of it has to do with loss of muscle mass, being weak. It's not always because there's an underlying medical condition, but that, of course, helps predispose you to that. So, okay. So Compassion Care Community is a bunch of people that came together and said, we got to make things better for everybody. How do we do that? We're going to look at how they're managing their lives on a daily basis and help encourage them, motivate them, train them, give them the resources and the knowledge they need to live their lives to meet those goals. So we look at the care team around people as well. So who are the motivators? Who's going to help me stay on track, right? Because me as an individual, I have a certain amount of motivation. I've got lots of knowledge and I know I need to do these things. But really, if I had someone calling me, maybe my BFF every day, or I had someone coming saying, let's walk together, I would be more motivated to do that. And that's going to make me healthier. And that's going to help reduce my risk of falls, for example, or reduce my risk of diabetes or heart disease, right? So this, sharing my journey right now, is in the middle of a 3-year research project as well. So the reason we have to do research projects, does anybody know? A lot of times government likes to look at data and say, oh, this really did make a difference. We should shift some funding that way to help support it so it's carrying on. And also it's used to help educate other parts of the world, right? So what's working in this part of the world? Let's see if it works over here. So we often adopt things from other countries like Britain, the United States, New Zealand, Australia, right? So there's often those things going on. We share our knowledge. So this is also about saying, let's share the knowledge that we get from working in this community. So right now, we actually look at people who are over 80 living with long-term disabilities or lifelong disabilities, and those who are living in isolation. The other reason is because those people who are fit in these categories are the people who need it first, right? So these are already the people who are at risk of falling or deteriorating or becoming more ill. And if we don't do something now, they might end up in a long-term care facility. They might end up in a rest and retirement home. How many people here want to live in their own homes for the rest of their life? I do. So the majority of us here want to stay in our homes as long as possible. In order to do that, we need to stay healthy to manage things. John, I love that you said, no, I don't. A lot of people love to go to rest and retirement homes. There's a big social connection there. There's like, you don't have to worry about transportation, those types of things. And that's great too, and that's why those things exist. But of course, you also want to continue to avoid falls and ending up in the more kind of higher end long-term care facility in terms of the service that you would need to help you.
And I don't know if this has anything to do with it, Diane, but someone with other training, social isolation when a person gets a little bit older also is a major factor in onset of dementia and other things that go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Which, if you can prevent that or delay that, it allows them to stay in their home longer.
So excellent point, bringing up the loss of the social connection. As our friends start to pass away or our kids move away and we don't have that same social connection, that does also increase our risk towards dementia. Dementia and Alzheimer's, just sort of as an aside, what are the two things that will help kind of ward or decrease our likelihood of getting those things? And outside of, there's a family history or it's in my genes type of thing. Does anybody know? Yes, Maureen.
Why was 80 years or older chosen for the I know you said because of statistics, but I would have said it should be in the 70, 75 range. Are there other statistics to show that there's a lot of 80-year-olds out there living on their own?
So these are all exclusive of one another. So in terms of looking at the ones that we believed would require the quickest help, it was people who were over 80 because they're kind of closer to the end of their lifelong trajectory, right? So we know the one stat of 100% of us are going to die, right? We know that stat is real. So if you're 80, you're closer to that time period. So for us to go out and aid them as much as possible, sooner rather than later, is why we picked 80.
But if you go at 75, you're helping them much earlier.
Yep, agreed. So when you bring 10 more volunteers next time, we can change the number, because it's also about capacity, right? So how many people do we have going out there to do that and help and educate people? So who do we want to reach first? So I agree, you're right, 75. We've had people who are 60 that needed it, people in their 50s. Lifelong disabilities is like people who have diabetes, people who have fibromyalgia, people who have COPD, right, or congestive heart failure. Any of those things fall in your lifelong disabilities.
Turn away anybody who has one of those afflictions and they're 65, 70?
No, because you can be either or you can have all three, okay. Right? So, I'll use my father as an example. My father's 88 years old, but he doesn't, well, I guess you could say he has osteoarthritis, so he could fall into the lifelong disability. And is he isolated? Well, he lives in a home that's out in the country and he lives by himself, so you could say he's isolated, but he's got a support system around him that checks on him and whatnot. So he could fall into all three categories. But I could be diabetic and I could say I don't fit in the 80 years or older category, but that would be a lifelong disability that I would have, and I could also be in it, right? And we've had people younger than that in it who are quadriplegic and whatnot. So we've had people from assisted living, Southwestern Ontario, they're one of our partners. And we've gone out to also kind of be that underlayer for looking at informal support. So it's another good point. So the older we get, the more chance there are of our circle around us, our social network kind of becoming less and less because they're people we know are dying, right? So we have less support around us and less socialization. So very good point. I know when I worked at the hospital, we had one physician who was famous for coming back to the desk, and we'd say, okay, so what's our plan of care for this individual? And he'd be like, they're 85, come on, they're done, right? I mean, they could be someone who was totally at home, like, you know, managing quite well and just kind of writing them off. So, you know, there can be those, I will say, the rare cases where you get individuals like that. I'd hope to say that it's less and less, but I would have to say the perception as an individual is, are they treating me the same as I would have been treated if I were 30? So the data that was taken is showing that 20% of our population, so 1 in 5 of us, actually fall into one of these 3 categories. So very interesting. That's the other side. What's the greatest impact that we're going to make here if we can start? That's 20% of the population. That's pretty big. Those are big numbers. So recruit more and more. So connecting neighborhoods, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and reaching out to people in need, and the Sharing My Journey program are all mechanisms we're doing that. So somebody tell me a definition of empathy. Someone define empathy. I know Jen knows both, right? You guys have sat through it. Empathy, what's empathy?
Is that when I have feelings for somebody else's feelings?
Right.
Do I feel for them, or I...
Right, yeah, so you recognize someone's position, and you feel like you could be in their shoes. So you recognize how they could be feeling. So it's kind of that affective side of things, right? The empathy. And then there's compassion. So how would you define compassion? So if empathy is that feeling side, I feel that I can understand what they're going through, and I have empathy for them. What's compassion?
It's an understanding of where that person is at that moment, and being with them or helping them or showing them you care.
The helping is the key word. So the compassion is the action, right? So what are you doing? What are you giving of yourself to aid that person, to help them, not just understanding that they're in a situation and I feel for them. Now it's like, what can I do to go out there and actually maybe show it some way? And it could be very simply just saying, you know, I hear that you've just got diagnosed with this, and I know that this, you know, this is kind of turning your world upside down right now. So I'm actually going to bring you some supper tonight, right? So I'm doing something to actually aid that person. And so, right, so you're actively going out and doing something. Another example might be, I see you've come back from the hospital, and I know you don't have a lot of support around you. Let's say it's someone who didn't really plan in advance something we're trying to change with this. You might go over and say, I notice your grass is getting long and I know you can't get out, so I'm going to cut your grass for you. And then when I'm done that, I've got a friend of mine who just made a big pot of soup, and they always have leftovers, so they've offered to bring you some soup, so I'll bring that over for you as well, right? So you're actively doing something for that person to aid them. So we're good at going, oh, that poor person. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that wasn't me, right? Right? I feel so bad for them. But now what do we do to actually make an impact to help them and show them compassion by our action? So when we look at what we're doing with Compassion Care Community, it's about this movement of changing the way we are as people every day.
จะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวันเขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลยไม่ได้รวยขึ้นไม่ได้ออกทีวีไม่มีใครรู้จักไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้นเพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิมในชีวิตคุณอะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
ไทยประกันชีวิตเชื่อในความดี
Hello, and thank you for participating as a Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community volunteer. What is this initiative all about? We are connecting people within our community to the services they both need and want while encouraging them to use their own skills, strengths, and talents to help their neighbors. We are looking at how we can improve our overall quality of life, thereby creating a healthier, thriving place to live. We will examine how encouraging volunteerism, sharing, and simply asking for help can better improve our lives and create a more responsive approach in meeting the needs of our aging population. It is our hope to reach out to older adults living in their homes, as well as those who are at risk of isolation and those suffering from long-term disabilities. You, the volunteer, play a central role in helping our clients reach their self-identified goals that could assist them in staying healthier longer. You are critical to our success because you provide a unique opportunity to encourage community involvement, engage and raise awareness. As a valued and integral member of our Compassion Care Community team, we hope to provide you with opportunities to utilize your individual skills, strengths, and talents, provide training to support you in your volunteer roles, and seek input for you along the way to assist us with planning and evaluation as we move forward. We strongly encourage you to develop and contribute in ways beyond your role as a Compassion Care Community volunteer. It is our hope that with your help in the community, we will improve the lives of older adults, those living with lifelong disabilities, or those who are isolated, increase the connectedness of people by sharing our skills and talents and asking for help when we need it, and improving the quality of life for one another as volunteers, care recipients, or citizens, and supporting one another in a more active manner. The following vignette has been developed to provide an overview of a Compassion Care Community volunteer experience as a Sharing My Journey coach, provide an introduction to the volunteer activities before, during, and after the client visit, and to demonstrate how volunteers, clients, the Compassion Care Community team members will communicate information. Every client visit will be different. However, the flow of communication will be very similar.
Hello.
Hello, Sheila.
Yes, this is Sheila.
It's Mike calling from the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community. How are you?
Each volunteer will provide their schedule 1 month in advance in order for us to complete the registration and planning for the first client visit. Each volunteer pair will be assigned and scheduled to visit a patient at home. All patients in the program have agreed and provided verbal consent to participate. Each volunteer will receive email notification about an upcoming visit. Each volunteer will receive information about the client prior to going to the visit.
I hope I've answered all your questions.
Yes, you have. Thank you for your time, Sheila. If you have no other questions, we look forward to seeing you on Tuesday at 3:30.
At least 1 day before your scheduled patient visit, arrange to pick up the client visit package from the office and connect with your volunteer partner and review your roles and responsibilities.
Hi, my name is Crystal, and this is Anam, and we are with the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Initiative, and we have an appointment with Sheila.
During the patient visit, Sharing My Journey volunteers will introduce themselves as Compassion Care Community volunteers who are there to assist the client, provide education, information, and assist them in developing their lifelong plan based on their own personal needs. This will be done through a conversation-style visit in order to receive the necessary information.
Some muffins?
Oh no, thank you, we're good.
But we appreciate the offer. Thank you for participating in the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Initiative. We're going to run through the Sharing My Journey program, but before we begin, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, but maybe later during the visit.
All right then, let's get started.
If the client is managing the use of computers themselves, introduce them to the personal health record and survey application. If the client is not managing technology themselves, complete a number of surveys identified in the package received for the visit with them, or leave them with the client to complete themselves if they so choose. There may be times where the client wants to discontinue the interview and continue at another time. The computerized applications, including the surveys and personal health records, may be conducted during more than one visit.
Sheila, we would like to take this opportunity just to talk about what you see as the best way to achieve the quality of life you deserve and what you want as your lifelong plan. From there, this information will help us decide what we need to do to help you get there. So just to start, we will be asking you a variety of questions, and this will only take about an hour or so of your time. At any point you feel uncomfortable and you want to pause and continue at a later time, please let us know. We'll be happy to do so.
Okay.
Anan will ask you questions, and I will take notes so we can develop a plan for your personal skills, needs, and talents. We will also ask for some responses to some survey questions that we are doing for research.
Answers to all your questions will be kept private and securely stored. We'll then work through the development of your personalized care plan, including a summary for easy reference. We would also like to help guide you build your own care team by connecting the individuals that are most close to you and that care about you the most. And we will make sure that every individual in your care team understands exactly what your plan is going forward.
At the end of each visit, we will provide you with a personalized plan with information that you choose to share. This is called Sharing My Journey. Is this all right with you?
Yes, let's continue.
Note that once the client identifies who their intended quarterback will be, if they choose this approach, the third visit will be used to transfer the responsibilities to that person.
Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It makes me think about some of the things that have been going on in my life.
You did a wonderful job answering our questions. At this point, do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't have any questions.
Well, then thank you so much, Sheila, for making time for us to visit you today. So before we leave, I just want to schedule a quick follow-up visit with you, if it's okay. How about 1 week from now? Would that be okay?
Let me check my schedule. How about next Wednesday at 1:30? Would that be okay?
Perfect.
When the visit is complete and you have left the client home, please communicate via email or by telephone to the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community Project Management Office.
Hi. Yeah, we just got done at Sheila's and everything went great and we're on our way back to the office.
The Compassion Care Community Project Management Office will send the Sharing My Journey volunteers a questionnaire electronically to obtain feedback on how the visit went for them. Call the client directly in follow-up to ensure that their needs were met and that the volunteers performed in a professional manner and gave instructions that were understood throughout, and document the client's interactions. After the visit, the information you gathered will be inputted into the Sharing My Journey report. This is the document that is compiled based on the information gathered at the visit. The report is built ongoing based on the information collected during each visit. By the third visit, the Sharing My Journey report should be fairly complete and transferred to the quarterback for continued updating and use. After the initial visit, a follow-up visit will be arranged at an agreed-upon date and time. This follow-up visit should not take place more than 1 month later. The objective of the subsequent visits are listed in the document titled Sharing My Journey Coach Roles and Responsibilities. This document provides all the detailed information of what needs to be done prior to each visit, at each visit, and after each visit. In general, follow-up visits are to ensure the client can access their PHR and are comfortable with its use, and show them how to do this if they have not accessed it yet. Ensure the client knows how to and is committed to completing the surveys. Eventually transfer the Sharing My Journey report and oversight responsibilities to the quarterback. Encourage the client to complete their advanced care planning. Encourage their client to contribute to and connect to others in their community through the use of social media, electronic tools, and time banks. And help facilitate the lifelong plan action needs for the client. So that concludes our vignette. Thank you for becoming a volunteer for the Sharing My Journey program with our Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community.
So the Sharing My Journey, as you would have seen in the video, is a program that matches volunteers with citizens to create care around them and what's most important to them to improve their quality of life. We structure it between 3 to 4 visits. Sometimes it takes 5 or 6. Everybody's different. But most people will take about 4 visits where volunteers go out and they guide people in developing their lifelong care plan. They recognize who the people are around them that they have available to support them, whether there's gaps, if there's people that they need to say, oh, I need to reach out to other places, or this is someone I forgot, like really recognize who's around to help them when they need it, and to share the responsibilities of care and help them achieve those goals. So when I say gaps in their care team, this is one thing that I'll say. We had one session where we had the volunteers come out, and at that time we did actually more information than what we do now. So we were actually teaching Eugenie, and Eugenie is the visual representation of the people that are around you to support you. And so one of the people that came out said, and the homework assignment was that they would write up their care team and come back, and when she came back she said, well, there's nobody. There is nobody in my life. My mom died, she was the one close to me. I don't see my son, he doesn't come around, and all I have are my dogs. And this is someone who said that despite having a roommate that she lived with. So we've actually taken this individual, and we've actually just spent more time kind of working on her as an individual and who really is around her to help support her. So it was really heartbreaking for me when she said this. as it would be for anybody else who saw it. And then, so to start, we said, okay, so just to start, let's put your pets in there, because your pets you're using to help with how you're feeling in terms of your comfort, right? So when you're sad or whatnot, right? That's where she was going to, right? My dog's here and I pet my dog and my dog is with me and my dog sleeps with me and that type of stuff. So, and then we'll have people on the other side that their care circle is full and you can't see it until you blow it up in giant proportions. But the idea is that we would say, if you were in a situation where you needed someone to help prepare meals, who would that person be? And if there's nobody in their circle, their team, how can we help work with them to say, well, you've identified this organization you're with, you go to this church, aren't there people in that congregation that might be willing to help you? So we help work through all of this with individuals, because one thing we're often not really good at is asking for help, right? So we need to really make sure we're prepared and know who could be possibly the one to go to. And I know if I went to people that in a heartbeat, I don't want to ask people for help. But I know if I went to, say, Diane and said, I'm going in the hospital in a month, would you mind, is there a day that you could bring me a bowl of soup or something? And she would say yes or no. The worst thing could happen is she says no, but likely she would say yes, right? So we know that, and a lot of time it's about, that's okay, a little boy. Yeah, so there's those types of things, like who do people rely on, and encouraging them to recognize that asking for help is not a bad thing, right? We all need help at different times in our lives. So the Sharing My Journey coach is a community volunteer who receives formal training and support with oversight from hospice. You guys have all been through that, right? Is there anybody who's not a patient care volunteer, trained volunteer? Okay. So you're paired up with a citizen or an individual to assist them in designing all of those things around them that are important to them to help educate and empower them to live and die well. So in order to live and die well, I need to know what my goals are, and I need to be able to understand that I am going to die. There is nobody who's immortal, right? We're all going to die. Coaches are a sounding board for people to help them clarify issues and create solutions for themselves. And we're not all experts in everything. And we actually have coordinators in our office, so we have what we call WEC coordinators. We also have all sorts of other resources that we go to. So your support mechanism is your WEC coordinator that you would go to say, I have this individual and here's the issue they have and I'm not sure what to do, right? So it's not about you having all the knowledge in the world and figuring things out yourself. It's about just going back and saying, I'm not sure what to do here. And that's not always the case, right? Because we all have life experience and we base what we can aid other people with often on our life experience. Sharing My Journey coaches are educators that help provide information to people and their care partners. They help motivate and empower people to solve problems and develop a sense of ownership in their plan. And they're a relationship broker where new resources need to be invited into the team to address something important. So Sharing My Journey coaches, you're volunteers. You're not professional care coordinators or case managers or service providers, and we don't expect you to be, right? So we expect that this is a layer of support to actually aid professionals, right? And get them the information and have it coordinated, and the individual themselves manage their own information. And they can succinctly give that to someone through the completion of the booklet. So we want people to be informed, accountable, and empowered to make their own choices. And care coaches should adjust to the values and preferences of the person being served. So really it's about, so someone may say, I've had these problems with my knee for a long time, but you know what? I'm not going for surgery. I'm not ever going to have that done. Your preference would have been in that situation, or if that was a loved one of yours, to have the surgery. But you're not going to say, oh, you should really have the surgery, right? So you're not putting that influence onto that individual to change what their thought is on how they're going to manage that. But you can give them suggestions on how to manage their pain or their mobility issues, right, in regard to community resources that are around them. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so you saw in the video that there's a coaching pair, right? So there's a volunteer that goes out with either a student or an actual WEC coordinator. And when you first go out, it's actually a WEC coordinator that you would go out with just to, you know, sit and observe the visit, start to feel comfortable. Usually all of this classroom stuff is kind of like, wow, that's a lot of information, right? But once you go out and you practically do it, it's like, oh, well, that was easy. And I kind of liken that to when we were in nursing school. You know, we were taught how to do a dressing change, and it was, okay, you have to unfold this way, and then the right one, right? And don't touch anything. And then you take that one forceps, and you have, right? So it was just this very kind of long, laborious process, and we were all like, oh my gosh, I got to go and do my first dressing change, right? And it's like, oh, I'm scared. Like it was just this big thing, and don't let your, you know, gauze touch anything. And when you pour the solution in here, make sure you put the lid right. Like, so it was like frightening, right? So everything the first time we go out can be a little bit frightening, but in the end, it was quite an easy task to do. It was not like it was in the big long session we had to learn about it and practice. Okay, so the supporting coach is who we call the student. And the student is actually going to come out with a computer, and they're actually going to be the person who do up the client booklets. So you guys are actually interviewers. You're actually people who talk. You relate to the client, right? So your experience, right, and your number of years working in a certain field or whatnot are what is going to help motivate and educate and connect with that individual, right? I know how my father is. So for example, if my son were to say to him, Grandpa, you should really do this way, Grandpa would say, what do you know, you're a kid, kind of thing, right? So we see the same thing with students, right? Well, what do you know? You're just a student, right? So that's the other thing. You have that great connection of youth with someone who's older and experienced, so that there's almost like a mutual learning, right? So the experienced person, the client learns from the student learns from the interaction with the volunteer, and they also learn, because we're going to need volunteers in 40 years when we need volunteers and none of us are doing volunteer work anymore, right? That's that generation that we need to pull up and say, this is what our volunteers do, and this is a really good thing, and look at the impact that it's made on this person, right? So this is also to help develop youth to become interested and have that grain popped into the back of their mind, right? Because youth have to do volunteer service in high school, right? It's usually kind of task-related things. Go cut the neighbor's grass, or go and sit and give flyers out, or whatnot. So this is actually, we consider this a high-level placement for our students when they come out. It's kind of taking a lot of higher-level learning and bringing it all together, as opposed to doing tasks like that dressing change I was giving as an example. So just a couple of definitions. So a care team are the people that the citizen invites into their team to help them achieve their goals. And this is family, friends, neighbors, your physician, so your professional and your non-professional, or your formal and your informal providers or people around you. And we use this term team quarterback, but hospice has had a share the care, is it share the care? Share the care program?
Originally share the care and then changed into
Right, yes.
This sort of models after it.
Right.
It's all very
Yeah, so this is actually a progression of something that hospice was doing, and actually a more expanded role that was previously called Share the Journey. And in Share the Journey, they use the term team captain. Here we use the team quarterback. I also use the term team lead. So there's really any term the individual could use to say, here's my point person. Paul is the person that is my team quarterback, and he's the one who's going to organize my care if something happens, like I'm in a car accident and I end up in the hospital and I have to come home to not having a leg anymore and trying to adjust to that and needing people around me, right? So Paul's going to be my lead. He's also going to be my lead for my communication to other people. And Paul and I have talked about this, and he knows exactly what I want, and I've written it all down, right? So that's what that relationship is, right? When you're the client and the quarterback. So he really takes over the role as well of motivating me to reach my goals. So if I come back from that car accident and I have to relearn how to walk, and now I have a prosthetic device, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't want to get out of bed, I'm not going to do it. Paul's the one who says, Lana offered to come and motivate Diane and help her with her exercise, so I'm going to give Lana a call, and she's going to come and get me out of bed, because Lana's been really good at motivating me all my life, right? So some people actually almost physically, I really want to take you to the movies, right? So they actually physically need that push. It's so different, right? That face-to-face relationship compared to on the phone. It's really easy to say no on the phone. It's really hard to say no face-to-face. So that whole face-to-face piece is just so important, right? So in order for me to motivate people, very often it's about going out and saying, come on, let's go. Okay, come on, really, right? And I've been friends with that person for 5-10 years, right? So that motivation thing is important. And so Paul doesn't always have to do every single thing, but Paul's coordinating, getting me the people that I need to get me moving. Okay, so the expected outcome for people is that they're positively impacted in terms of their health, their social support networks, and happiness. We talked about this earlier, kind of all those things that we need to help keep us healthy, all those things that are making us unhealthy. And there's millions more, right? Help individuals to adapt and compensate for their challenges in order to thrive, whatever their circumstance. And aid in strengthening connections within our community. So those are what the expected outcomes are for the Sharing My Journey. And the very last, so the module C, the very last module is actually, I'll show you a video of actually that Christy did, which really, we'll do a new one too, but it's really our initial group of people that we went out and started this with, and their positive feedback and the experience from it.
My name is Roy Rutt, and I've been retired for 10 years.
The only thing I ever did was housework.
My name is John Bunn, and I'm a retired jack of all trades.
Hi, my name is Nancy Kilroy-Ola. I'm a retired RN and also a retired behavior therapist for autistic children.
I don't feel the care over here that I've had in Canada has been satisfactory, and that's been partially due to the cancer that I had. They give me the 8 chemos here in Windsor. After the 8th chemo, they went ahead and the doctor said, well, Mr. Rutt, you got 12 days to live.
I felt that I was isolated way out here. There's not much available in the county for individuals going through cancer.
My physical care has been very well done. My wife passed away 5 years ago, and since then, life has lost a lot of spark. Mostly I cope with some tricks that I was taught when I went to Brentwood. I'm 30 years sober, and so I have a lot of people that I can talk to to keep me from getting so depressed.
Girls from also, I have them here every day. They make my lunch and they make my dinner. They give me a shower. They do my laundry. They make my bed. Oh, they're terrific guys. They really make me feel comfortable.
At first, I didn't really know exactly what it was, okay? But once I got into it and understand what they did and what your kid can do, it sounds pretty, I'm looking forward to it. It sounds pretty exciting for me because especially that one program where you can talk to other people about what they do and share their experiences and your experiences, and hopefully they can help me out with some stuff, and I can help them out with some stuff.
I'm really excited to start the Our World program. We're actually going to be starting it in the church that I belong to, and we're going to start networking it there, and then we're going to pair off to sister parishes.
Some of the things that they talked about, for example, we talked about, because I'm so crazy about music, they talked about would I be interested in doing something like a blog, which, you know, that's computerese for I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I think it's wonderful that you people are around and really want to, you know, do things for the seniors.
The only thing I would have liked is if they would have started it earlier in my treatment versus in the middle, like towards the end. I enjoyed meeting all the different people that were able to connect me to different agencies.
I'm not outgoing enough to go out and chase opportunities. When they come to me, then I'm perfectly happy to get involved and sometimes even get excited about doing things.
And this is banging me. What this is doing, whether I like it or not, is banging me on the head to get through with what I gotta go ahead and do. Because I still got to talk. I got to get with my kids. I got to talk to them about, you know, the finances. You know, a lot of things.
I thought the WAC program was essential, and I hope that everybody gets the opportunity to be able to participate in it. It also helped with bringing my family together so that we could talk about the end times and being prepared and where everything is located, so that when the event does occur, the family is not left to figure out where everything is, like power of attorney and power of finances, and you know, what my last wishes are. So that's something that I really was thankful for.
Recently I had WAC come in, you guys. I had WAC come in, I had Amy and Samantha come in and help put the tree up, decorate, and I had a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. It means a lot to have support all the time, like doing things other than, because the girls that I have right now from Barcelona here, they come and give me support, but they help mostly with the cooking and all that, but not like this. Like this is, I need this support because it's different. It makes me feel good, because that's what Christmas is all about. Not just Christmas, but like this all year round. To be in the Windsor-Essex Compassion Care Community, it feels valued, basically. That's what I need.
Could you say just generally about what your experience was like, how you felt at the end of this program as a caregiver?
I actually felt very excited. And when I got back, I actually went to the office of the coordinators that were putting on the program, because I wanted to get onto the website and I wanted to learn all about it that I could, because I want to do it immediately. I just found out that my brother, his cancer has been re-diagnosed. He's my oldest brother. He has no family, and I'm also going to be his caregiver as well. So the last time this happened to him, when he was in the hospital for, many different health issues related to his cancer, I just found that I really needed the help. And I find that with this program, not only is it going to help with my mother now, but it's going to be able to help with my brother. And I just want to get in on the website and just start using it as soon as I possibly can.
So I know everybody's got a pen. And under the next tab, the third tab, that says Advanced Care Planning. And we're going to talk about Advanced Care Planning because part of your lifelong plan needs to be about planning for the what if I can't communicate, right? What if I'm in a car accident and I cannot communicate for whatever reason? What if I have a stroke and I'm not able to communicate? Who's going to make my decisions for me? So when we talk to clients about their lifelong planning, we introduce it right at registration, because of all the things for people to kind of sit and digest and think about, advanced care planning has seemed to be the one that they've required the most settling in time, I guess. So we actually introduce it right at the beginning. And one of the roles on the first visit is to follow up and say, so I noticed that you don't have an advanced care plan. What have you had a chance to review the information, right? So we want to make sure you guys have a good understanding of it, not that you have to become experts in it, but so you're ready to kind of manage any questions that you might have, or hear some information, or because really we're about imparting knowledge. It talks about first think about the situations you could be in. So it's not about, well, I'm in this situation and this is what's going to happen to me. I've been diagnosed with cancer and I've been given a prognosis of 2 years, so I get a plan now. It's about every day we need to be planning, right? Because we never know what's going to happen. So think is the first thing that, of course, that we want to make sure that we're going through. And then what was the second thing? Does anybody remember? Yeah, so we want to learn. So I just spewed out a few things that people may or may not be familiar with: feeding tubes, IV tubes, ventilators, tracheostomies. If you're not familiar with any of those things, you want to learn about what they are. And it never hurts to, if you have questions about them, you can talk to a nurse practitioner. If you're in a family health team, you could talk to your physician. And of course, we've got the power of the internet, so we've got so much knowledge at our fingertips, we can just look there as well if we use the internet. What was the next thing? So first we got to think about, what do I want? Now I got to learn about the things that we got to decide. Got to decide what's going to be happening next. And then what are we going to do? Yeah. Who are we talking to? Everybody? You're awesome. You're going to make sure everybody knows this is what I want. Awesome. No, that's great, because that's often the hardest thing to do, right? How many people have an advanced care plan? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4?
Sorry, have a what?
An advanced care plan. Advanced care plan. No. So I would encourage us all to think about it and start to have these conversations with the people that are going to be around to make these decisions and determine what I would want. An advanced care plan is not a legal document, but it's a document that really lists out my wishes, right? So I could write it on a piece of foolscap, right? I could write it out right now. I could type it up, or I could do it up in this Speak Up Ontario booklet. I could go online and do it on any sort of template documents. There's all sorts of things that you could do. So recording is very important, just like the scenario I gave earlier about Paul and I, right? It's hard for us to let go, right? We love that person. We see them as they were in the best times of their life, and that's what we want to hold on to. Sometimes it's hard to make those decisions. So if they're written out, yeah, I guess Diane really did want that. It makes a difference when we're trying to make those difficult decisions. Substitute decision maker is the person who's going to speak for you when you can't speak for yourself. And here's that lovely hierarchy of substitute decision makers. So the first 3 are your legally appointed substitute decision makers. If you've not legally appointed someone, so you've not done up a power of attorney for personal care, it's going to automatically go to your automatic family member substitute decision makers. So if you're still married to someone that you're not on good terms with and you end up in a car accident, that person's going to make the decisions for you if you've not done up your power of attorney. So you may or may not want that. If you're legally divorced, you're okay. But a lot of people will separate, and there's this, legally they're still married. I've talked to people who've done that for years. Yeah. So in that, in any of these situations, people can refuse, but they might not.